32. 32. 16. Only in a dirge or lamentation would the chanting style be preferable to either the melody of music or the modulation and oral emphasis of pure speech. C. Dirge. Mustache. C. Beard. Mustard gr. C. Middle. Pi. A rapid growing herb, to the seed or grain of which Jesus referred in an illustration about the kingdom of the heavens. Mount 13. 31, 32. Mr. 4. 30-32. Lu 13. 18, 19. See illustrations and in pointing out that even a little faith can accomplish much. Mount 17. 20. Lu 17. 6. Several kinds of mustard plants are found growing wild in Palestine, black mustard brassica nigra being the variety commonly cultivated. In rich soil the seed, after a few months, may become tree-like, a plant measuring as much as 4.5 meters, 15 feet in height, with a central stalk having the thickness of a man's arm. The flowers of mustard plants are yellow and the leaves rather irregularly edged and dark green in color. The pods that develop contain a row of seeds, those of the black mustard being dark brown. In the fall the stems and branches of the plants harden and become rigid, strong enough to support birds such as linnets and finches that feed on the seeds. While some may argue that a mustard grain is not the tiniest of all seeds, orchid seeds being smaller, and that it does not actually become a tree, it must be borne in mind that Jesus was speaking in terms familiar to his audience. As far as Jesus' listeners were concerned, the mustard grain was indeed among the tiniest seeds planted, and it is noteworthy that the Arabs designate as trees plants smaller than the mustard. Mount 13. 31. Hence, some commentators consider that the one or he who incited David to take the census was Jehovah. His anger against Israel, according to this view, predated the census and was due to their recent rebellions against Jehovah and his appointed king, David, when they followed first ambitious Absalom and then the good-for-nothing Sheba, the son of Bichri, in opposition to David. 2 Sa 15. 10-12. 20. 1. 2 Such all textoi acute miritra longo, registration 766, because the king's word had been detestable to Joab Levi not being counted, in accord with the law at Numbers 1. 47-49. Joab either stopped before registering Benjamin or delayed the progress of the registration, and David came to his senses and called a halt to it before Joab had completed it. 1 Ch 21. 6 Joab may have avoided Benjamin, because he did not want to stir up this tribe that was the tribe of Saul, which had fought David's army under Joab before uniting with the other tribes under David. 2 Sa 2. 12-17 No doubt, because the making of the count was wrong, it was not entered into the account of the affairs of the days of King David. 1 Ch 27. 24. The count revealed that Israel had 1,100,000 men and Judah had 470,000, according to the record at 1 Chronicles 21. 5. The report at 2 Samuel 24. 9 says 800,000 men of Israel and 500,000 men of Judah. Some believe that a scribal error exists. But it is unwise to ascribe error to the record when the circumstances, methods of counting, and so forth, are not fully understood. The two accounts may have reckoned the number from different viewpoints. For example, it is possible that members of the standing army and all their officers were counted or omitted. And different methods of reckoning may have caused a variation in the listing of certain men, as to whether they were under Judah or Israel. We find what may be such an instance at 1 Chronicles 27. Here 12 divisions in the king's service are listed, naming all the tribes except Gad and Asher, and naming Levi and the 2 half-tribes of Manasseh. This may have been because the men of Gad and Asher were combined under other heads at the time, or for other reasons not stated. Jehovah's judgment. Jehovah's prophet Gad was sent to David, giving David, the authorizer of the census, a choice of one of 3 forms of punishment. A famine for 3 years, the sword of Israel's enemies overtaking Israel for 3 months, or a pestilence for 3 days. David, leaning on God's mercy rather than man's, chose to fall into the hand of Jehovah. In the pestilence that followed, 70,000 persons died. 1 Ch 21. 10-14. Here another variation is found between the Samuel and Chronicles accounts. Whereas 2 Samuel 24. 13 says 7 years of famine, 1 Chronicles supply of water is available, and just east of the site there is a fertile plain. Anciently Shechem commanded the EW and NS roads traversing central Palestine. Compare JG 21. 19. Lacking the military advantage of being built on a mountain, the city depended on its fortifications for security. JG 9. 35. When Abraham first entered the Promised Land, he traveled as far as the site of Shechem and encamped near the big trees of Moreh, where he later built an altar. GE 12. 6-9 Nearly 2 centuries afterward Jacob, upon returning from Paddan Aram, pitched camp in front of Shechem and purchased some land there. In reaction to their sister Dinah's being violated by Shechem the son of Hamor, the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, killed the men of the city. GE 33. 18. 34. 31 At God's direction Jacob left Shechem but, before doing so, took all the foreign gods and deerings in the possession of his household and buried them under a textoi acute miritra longo. Sheet 915 statement was an elliptic one. If the ellipsis was filled in, Stephen's statement could read: Jacob went down into Egypt, and he deceased. And so did our forefathers, and they were transferred to Shechem and were laid in the tomb that Abraham had bought for a price with silver money and in that bought from the sons of Hamor in Shechem. Acts 7. 15, 16 There is also a possibility that, since Jacob was Abraham's grandson, the potris could have been ascribed to Abraham as the patriarchal head. This would be using the name of the forefather as applying to and being used for the descendants, in the same manner as the names Israel, Jacob and others were later used. Compare Ho 11. 1, 3, 12. Mount 2. 15-18. Among the tribal allotments in the Promised Land, Shechem seems to have been within Manasseh's territory, being about 3 kilometers to me and W of the border town of Michmethath. Jos 17. 7 Since Shechem is described as being in the mountainous region of Ephraim, it may have been an Ephraimic enclave city in Manasseh territory. Jos 16. 9. 1 Ch 6. 67 The city was thereafter assigned with other Ephraimite cities to the Levites and given sacred status as a city of refuge. Jos 21. 20, 21 Just before his death, Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem, encouraging them to serve Jehovah. Jos 24. 1-29. Although the Israelites had covenanted at Shechem to uphold true worship, the inhabitants of that city began worshipping Baal-berith. JG 8. 33. 9. For they also supported the efforts of Abimelech the son of Judge Gideon and his Shechemite concubine to become king. But, in time, they revolted. GE 11. 3 Ancient Babylonian ruins reveal the use of kiln-fired bricks from ancient times. Such durable bricks were used in the more important structures for veneered walls and for paved areas. Some houses excavated at Abraham's one-time residence have the lower level built with burnt bricks, while the second story was evidently of sun-dried bricks. Sun-dried bricks, while not as durable as kiln-fired bricks, were inexpensive, easy to manufacture, and satisfactory in dry climates. See brick. Egyptian pottery kilns were shaped like a tapered chimney, with a perforated baffle between the fire pit below and the firing chamber above. The pottery was placed in this chamber before the fuel was ignited. The correct firing of the kiln was a trade secret among Egyptian potters, and skill was required to bring out the desired qualities in the finished products. The draft created by the air rushing from the fireplace up the flue drew the fire through the baffle perforations and allowed it to circulate around the pottery before passing out at the top of the stack. In preparation for his sixth blow against Egypt and its proud Pharaoh, Jehovah commanded Moses and Aaron, "Take for yourselves both hands full of soot from a kiln, and Moses must toss it toward the heavens in Pharaoh's sight." Complying with these instructions, they took the soot of a kiln and stood before Pharaoh, and Moses tossed it toward the heavens, and it became boils with blisters, breaking out on man and beast. X9. 8-10. Palestinian kilns, or furnaces, discovered at Megiddo, measuring about 2.5 by 3 meters, 8 by 10 feet, are U-shaped. In this type, the fireplace is located in the bend of the enclosure. Evidently, The draft entering below the fireplace door forced the flames through the 2 firing chambers and out the 2 flues located at the rear of the kiln. Lime kilns. Lime kilns were used in ancient Palestine because of the abundance of limestone. More recently in that land such kilns have been built on hillsides, the hill forming part of the rear wall. The kilns have been constructed of rough stones without mortar, the spaces between the stones being filled with clay, but with a large open flue at the top. After the interior was properly packed with crushed limestone, a hot fire made from brush would be started in the fireplace at the base of the kiln. The strong draft entering through a tunnel in the bottom of the kiln would carry the flames up through the limestone, heating it until it was converted into lime. This process would normally continue for several days. See lime. The first direct biblical reference to a kiln is at Genesis 19:28. There the black voluminous smoke of a kiln is used to describe the scene Abraham saw when he looked down upon the burning cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and all the district and observed that thick smoke ascended from the land like the thick smoke of a kiln. When the Israelites gathered at the base of Mount Sinai to meet the true God, the awe-inspiring spectacle before their eyes included Mount Sinai's smoking all over, due to the fact that Jehovah came down upon it in fire. The Median Empire thus came under the control of the Persians. Although the Medes continued subservient to the Persians during the remainder of the Achaemenid dynasty, there can be no doubt as to the dual nature of the empire that resulted. Thus, the book History of the Persian Empire p. 37 says, "The close relationship between Persians and Medes was never forgotten. Plundered Ecbatana remained a favorite royal residence. Medes were honored equally with Persians. They were employed in high office and were chosen to lead Persian armies. Foreigners spoke regularly of the Medes and Persians. When they used a single term, it was the Mede. Under Cyrus, the Medo-Persian Empire expanded farther reaching to the Aegean Sea as a result of the Persian victory over King Croesus of Lydia and the subjugation of certain Greek coastal cities. His major conquest, however, came in 539 BCE when Cyrus, at the head of a combined force of Medes, Persians, and Elamites, took mighty Babylon, in fulfillment of the biblical prophecies. Isla 21. 2, 9. 44. 26. 45. 7. Dar 5. 28. With Babylon's fall came the end of a long period of Semitic supremacy, now superseded by the first dominant world power of Aryan Japhetic descent. It also brought the land of Judah as well as Syria and Phoenicia within the Medo-Persian domain. By Cyrus' decree, in 537 BCE the exiled Jews were allowed to return to their homeland, which had lain desolate for exactly 70 years. 2ch 36. 20-23. See Cyrus. Persian capitals. In keeping with the dual nature of the empire, a Mede named Darius became the ruler of the defeated Chaldean kingdom, though likely not independent from Cyrus' suzerainty. Dar 5. 31. 9. 1. See Darius number 1. Babylon continued as a royal city of the Medo-Persian Empire, as well as a religious and commercial center. However, the torrid summers there generally seem to have been more than the Persian emperors wanted to endure, so Babylon seldom served as more than a winter location for them. There is archaeological evidence that, following the conquest of Babylon, Cyrus soon returned to Ecbatana, modern Hamadan, situated over 1,900 meters, 6,200 feet above sea level at the foot of Mount Alwand, where winters of heavy snow and bitter cold are balanced by delightful summers. It was at Ecbatana that Cyrus' memorandum concerning the reconstruction of Jerusalem's temple was found several years after it had been issued. As 6. 2-5 The earlier Persian capital was at Pasargadae, about 650 kilometers 400 meters of Ecbatana, but at about the same altitude. Near Pasargadae, Persian emperors Darius, Xerxes, and Artaxerxes Longimanus later built the royal city of Persepolis, equipping it with a Thyatira congregation approved this Jezebel influence, since the message went on to speak to the rest of you who are in Thyatira, all those who do not have this teaching, the very ones who did not get to know the deep things of Satan. Re 2. 18-29. Tiberias T middle.Berea middle.as. 1. A city founded by Herod Antipas about 18 CE and named after Tiberius Caesar, emperor of the Roman Empire at the time. It is still called Tiberias Devria and is situated about 25 kilometers 15 miles of Nazareth, on a comparatively narrow strip along the western shore of the Co Textoi Acute Muritra Longo. About 1100 married Julia, the emperor's widowed daughter. Augustus adopted him in 4 CE. Augustus chose Tiberius as his successor only after others whom he preferred above Tiberius had all died. On August the 17th, 14 CE Gregorian calendar, Augustus died. On September the 15th, Tiberius allowed the Senate to name him emperor. John started baptizing in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar. If the years were counted from the death of Augustus, the 15th year ran from August the 28th CE to August the 29th CE. If counted from when he was formally proclaimed emperor, the year would run from September the 28th CE to September the 29th CE. Lu 3. 1-3. Tiberius lived until March 37 CE, and hence was emperor for the entire period of Jesus' ministry. It was therefore most likely his image that was on the tax coin brought to Jesus when he said, "Pay back Caesar's things to Caesar." Mr. 12. 14-17. Mount 22. 17-21. Lu 20. 22-25. Tiberius extended the law of lesa magistris injured majesty to include, in addition to seditious acts, merely libelous words against the emperor, and presumably on the strength of this law the Jews pressured Pontius Pilate to have Jesus killed. Joe 19. 12-16. Tiberius later called Pilate to Rome, because of Samaritan complaints against his administration, but Tiberius died and Caligula succeeded him before Pilate arrived. As an emperor, Tiberius had both virtues and vices. He restrained spending on luxuries and so had funds to use generously to build up the empire's prosperity as well as reserves to assist recovery from disasters and bad times. Tiberius viewed himself as a man not a god, declined many honorary titles, and generally directed emperor worship to Augustus Octavian rather than to himself. His vices exceeded his virtues, however. He was extremely suspicious and hypocritical in his dealings with others, and his reign abounded with ordered killings, many of his former friends being numbered among the victims. He consulted astrologers. At his villa on Capri, where he spent the last 10 years of his life, he indulged his perverted lusts in a most debased manner with men kept for unnatural purposes. Tiberius was despised not only by such individuals as his school became part of the territory of the tribe of Simeon. Jos 19. 1-6. Also, the nomadic Kenates, who were related to Moses through marriage, took up the Negeb, the south of Judah, though generally a harsh terrain, at one time supported a sizable population. Nehemiah 485 residents in the Negeb. JG 1. 16. Compare 1-15. 6, 7. The Israelites evidently did not maintain control over the area. Over the years there were repeated clashes with the Canaanites of the Negeb, and particularly with the Amalekites. JG 1. 9. 6. 3. 1-15. 1-9. 30. 1-20. From the city of Ziklag, given to him by the Philistine king Achish, David made raids upon the Geshurites, the Gerzites, and the Amalekites of the Negeb. 1-27. 5-8. Apparently not until David's reign as king, after the defeat of the Edomites, did Israel gain complete control of the Negeb. 2-8. 13, 14. The later Judean king Uzziah evidently built towers and hewed out cisterns in this region. 2ch 26. 10. After the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians, Obadiah foretold that the Israelites would be restored to their land, including the Negeb. Ob 19, 20. Neglect. This word has the meaning of paying no attention to, disregarding, being remiss in care for or treatment of someone or something, failure to carry out or perform orders, duties, and so forth. The word can carry the connotation of willfulness or deliberateness in such failure, or merely of oversight through indifference or carelessness. One of several Hebrew terms having the meaning neglect is the verb parmiddle.ra, which literally means loosen. New 5. 18. It has the sense go ungroomed with regard to physical appearance. 10. 6. Go unrestrained with regard to conduct. X 32. 25. And neglect or shun discipline. PR 13. 18. 15. 32. Compare x5. 4, where it is rendered leave off. Another is the word amidal.zav, which literally means abandon. Leave. De 29. 25. 1 Kai 12. 8 Thus, Nehemiah encouraged true worshippers not to neglect the house of the true God. Ne 10. 39. Compare 13. 11. Another Hebrew term to designate neglect literally means slackness, like that of a loose bough. Jah 48. 10. Compare PS 78. 57. The Greek word amidal.me lo from me, not, a condition that the 2.5 tribes willingly met. New 32. 1-38. Jos 1. 12-18. 4. 12, 13. 12. 6. 13. 8-10. Reuben's territorial inheritance was thus settled even before the Israelites crossed the Jordan, Moses himself giving the southern portion of Sihon's conquered kingdom to this tribe. It extended from the torrent valley of Arnon, a natural boundary that separated this territory from Moab on the S, to just end of the Dead Sea. The land end of Reuben was given to the Gadites. New 34. 13-15. To 3. 12, 16. 29. 8. Jos 13. 15-23. 18. 7. The territory of the Ammonites formed the E boundary, with the Dead Sea and Jordan River on the west. Jos 15. 1, 6. 18. 11, 17. One of the 6 cities of refuge, Bezer, lay in Reuben's territory. This and other Reubenite cities were set aside for the use of the Moabites. De 4. 41-43. Jos 20. 8. 21. 7, 36. 1 Ch 6. 63, 78, 79. Moses directed that, once the Israelites reached the heart of Canaan, the tribe of Reuben, together with Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali, was to be represented on Mount Ebal for the reading of the maledictions and curses, with the rest of the tribes represented on Mount Gerizim for the pronouncing of blessings. The 27. 11-13. After Moses made these arrangements, he blessed Reuben along with the rest of the tribes. To the Reubenites, Moses said, "Let Reuben live and not die off, and let his men not become few." The 33. 1, 6. At the end of Joshua's campaign in Canaan, he called together the armed forces of Reuben, Gad, and half of the tribe of Manasseh and, after commending them on keeping their promises to Moses, sent them home with his blessing. Jos 22. 1-8. When they reached the Jordan, they erected a huge altar on the western bank, which action, being at first misinterpreted by the other tribes, nearly resulted in a rupture of relations, even civil war. But when it was explained that the altar was not for sacrifices, but was for a witness of faithfulness between the tribes on both sides of the Jordan, the altar was given a name, likely witness, for, as they said, it is a witness between us that Jehovah is the true God. Jos 22. 9-34. Later history. Many years later, when no text or acute mirror used. Rather, such a pearl could serve as a rallying point to which people or armies could assemble themselves. Issa 5. 26. 13. 2. 18. 3. 30. 17. 31. 9. Jah 4. 6, 21. 50. 2. 51. 12, 27. Compare PS 60. 4, FTN. For example, when the Israelites on one occasion complained about manna and the lack of water, Jehovah punished them by sending poisonous serpents among them. After the Israelites manifested repentance, Jehovah instructed Moses to fashion a serpent and to place it upon a signal pole nes. Moses at once made a serpent of copper and placed it upon the signal pole. And it did occur that if a serpent had bitten a man and he gazed at the copper serpent, he then kept alive. New 21. 5-9 Evidently this signal pole stood in a fixed location and was doubtless on an elevated place so that it was visible to the Israelites who had been bitten by serpents. Similarly, in 537 BCE Jerusalem, whose rebuilding had been foretold, became the signal that beckoned the Jewish remnant to leave the lands to which they had been dispersed and to return to the then desolated Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. Issachar 11. 12. Compare Issachar 49. 22. 62. 10, 11. The prophecy, however, is not limited to this 6th century application. Isaiah 11. 10 reads, "And it must occur in that day that there will be the root of Jesse that will be standing up as a signal for the peoples." The Apostle Paul applied these words to Christ Jesus, the one who would rule nations. Row 15. 8, 12 Also, Jesus spoke of himself as the root of David the son of Jesse. Re 22. 16 Accordingly, the signal is Christ Jesus as reigning king standing on heavenly Mount Zion. Compare Heb 12. 22. Re 14. 1. Signature. A person's identifying mark. The word signature is a translation of the Hebrew word Tor, the name of the last letter of the Hebrew O text Toyakut Miritra Longo, Siloam 943 Anan, and apparently he dominated Midian, for the chieftains of Midian are called the Dukes of Sihon. New 21. 26-30. Jos 13. 21 When Israel sent messengers asking Sihon's permission to pass through his kingdom on the king's road and promising not to steal anything from the Amorites, Sihon denied permission and gathered his army to block Israel. At Jashaz he was defeated and killed. New 21. A middle.sis. Both are related to the verb gi-no-sco, which means know. Understand. Perceive. The way this verb is used in the Bible, though, shows that it can indicate a favorable relationship between the person and one he knows. 1 Co-8. 3. 2T2. 19 Knowledge Gnosis is put in a very favorable light in the Christian Greek scriptures. However, not all that men may call knowledge is to be sought, because philosophies and views exist that are falsely called knowledge. 1T6. 20 The recommended knowledge is about God and his purposes. O text Toyakut Miritra Longo, knowledge 182 Putting on the new personality and in gaining peace. Col 3. 10. 2P1. 2. Related attributes. Frequently in the Bible, knowledge is linked with other attributes such as wisdom, understanding, discernment, and thinking ability. PR2. 1-6, 10, 11 Grasping the basic differences between these greatly illuminates many texts. It is to be acknowledged, though, that the original words involved cannot be said to match invariably certain English words. The setting and the use of a word affect the sense. Nonetheless, certain interesting differences emerge when one notes the Bible's references to knowledge, wisdom, understanding, discernment, and thinking ability. Wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to put knowledge to work, or to use it, the intelligent application of learning. A person might have considerable knowledge but not know how to use it because of lacking wisdom. Jesus linked wisdom with accomplishment in saying, "Wisdom is proved righteous by its works." Mount 11. 19 Solomon asked for and received from God not just knowledge but also wisdom. 2ch1. 10. 1 Chi 4. 29-34 In the case of two women who claimed the same child, Solomon had knowledge of a mother's devotion to her child. He displayed wisdom by using his knowledge to settle the dispute. 1 Chi 3. 16-28 Wisdom is the prime thing, for without it knowledge is of little value. PR 4. 7. 15. 2 Jehovah abounds in and provides both knowledge and wisdom. Row 11. 33. Ches 1. 5. Understanding. Understanding is the ability to see how the parts or aspects of something relate to one another, to see the entire matter and not just isolated facts. The Hebrew root verb bin has the basic meaning separate or distinguish, and it is often rendered understand or discern. It is similar with the Greek c. miles, thus at Acts 28:26 quoting Isa 6:9-10 it could be said that the Jews heard but did not understand, or did not put together in form of Pilatia, meaning Jehovah has provided escape. Post-exilic head of the priestly paternal house of Modiah in the days of Jeshua's successor Joachim. NE 12:17. Pim. The price that the Philistines charged the Israelites for sharpening various otextoi acute muritra longo, Piram 644 those who handle the pipe or flute. GE 4:21, FTN. This possibly indicates the establishment of a profession, either of craftsmen making the instruments or of those playing them. Although the U-gave was never listed as one of the temple instruments, some scholars believe that this name became a general term, designating any woodwind. Originally, though, it may have been a specific instrument, perhaps the flute or possibly a series of multi-toned pipes all closed at one end and blown across the open ends. The instrument in Nebuchadnezzar's orchestra specified by the Aramaic word mash ro pipe, da 3. 5, 7, 10, 15. At, da, mo, nw, rs may correspond to the Hebrew U-gave. Piram Zebra. The Amorite king of Jarmuth at the time Israel entered the Promised Land. Piram joined with 4 other Amorite kings in a conspiracy against the Gibeonites, who had made peace with Joshua. In the battle that followed, Piram and the other kings took refuge in a cave at Makeda, which the Israelites sealed up until the fighting was over. Piram and the others were then slain, hung on stakes until evening, and entombed in the same cave. Jos 10. 1-27. Pyrathan Pyramidal.than, Pyrathanite Pyr-Middle.thon of belonging to Pyrathan. Pyrathan was a town of Ephraim in the mountain of the Amalekite. Evidently an inhabitant of Pyrathan was known as a Pyrathanite, as were Hillel and, later, Benaiah, one of David's mighty men. Hillel's son Judge Abdon was buried there. JG 12. 13, 15. 2 Sa 23. 8, 30. 1 Ch 11. 31. 27. 14 Farata, about 10 kilometers 6 MW of the suggested location for Shechem, has been suggested as a possible identification. Pisgah. An elevated place in the northern section of the Abarim mountain range immediately of the Dead Sea. The exact location is unknown. Bible references are not in conflict with its suggested identity with Rases Seagar, a headland located about 16 kilometers 10 mi of where the Jordan empties into the Dead Sea. Rases Seagar is a little NW of Jebel Unba, the summit traditionally known as Mount Nebo HaNevo. The physical features of these two elevations are in agreement with the Bible's brief description. Rases Seagar is about 100 meters 330, but it became like a degenerate vine. Ho 9. 10. 1. Like a foreign vine producing wild grapes. Issa 5. 4. Ch 2. 21. A common proverbial saying in the time of Jeremiah and Ezekiel referred to the fact that unripe grapes set the teeth on edge, because of their sourness. Ch 31. 29, 30. As 18. 2. Attempts have been made to link the vine of Sodom with various plants found native to the Dead Sea area, but the setting of this expression in its only occurrence to 32. 32 clearly indicates a figurative use. Sodom is repeatedly used in the Bible to represent moral corruption and wickedness. Issa 1. 10. 3. 9. Ch 23. 14. Jesus spoke on a number of occasions about vineyards and their grapes. Mount 20. 1-16. Just 3 days before his death, he gave the illustration of the wicked cultivators. Mr. 12. 1-9. Lu 20. 9-16. See illustrations. When instituting the Lord's evening meal, Jesus used wine, the product of the vine, as a symbol of his blood of the covenant. On that final night of his earthly life, he also spoke of himself as the true vine and of his Father as the cultivator. His disciples he likened to the branches who would be either pruned so as to bear more fruit or lopped off completely. Mount 26. 27-29. Mr. 14. 24, 25. Lu 22. 18. Joe 15. 1-10. Prophetic use. When Jacob blessed Judah, there was prophetic meaning in his words. Tying his full-grown ass to a vine leg Jephunneh the descendant of his own she-ass to a choice vine wayless so re he will certainly wash his clothing in wine and his garment in the blood of grapes. Dark red are his eyes from wine. Ge 49. 8-12 The Hebrew word so re denotes a red vine yielding the richest or choicest fruit. Compare Issa 5. 2. Ch 2. 21, where the related term Sarek occurs. A few days before the sign reading the King of the Jews was posted above him on the torture stake Mr. 15. 26, Jesus Christ, who is of the tribe of Judah, rode into Jerusalem on a colt, the foal of an ass, thereby being presented to Jerusalem as her king. Mount 21. 1-9. Zech 9. 9 While Jesus did not tie the colt of the she-ass to a literal vine, he did bind his kingly claims to a symbolic vine, a spiritual one, namely, God's kingdom. Compare Mount 21. 41-43, the trend of the northern kingdom. He continued Jeroboam's idolatry. In fact, he kept doing what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah and came to do worse than all who were prior to him. 1 Kings 16. 25, 26 Some 200 years later, through Micah, Jehovah condemned Israel for following the statutes of Omri. Mix 6. 16. 4. A Judite whose descendant lived in Jerusalem following the Babylonian exile. 1 Ch 9. 3, 4. On. The name of a person and a place. 1. Generative power. Dynamic energy. A son of Peleth. A principal man of the tribe of Reuben. New 16. When he was among those raising a protest against Moses and Aaron, but his name does not appear among the rebels in their later speeches to Moses or when they were punished by Jehovah with destruction. New 16. 2, 3, 12-14, 23-35 This may be due to his playing a very textually acute Muritra Longo. Onesimus 555 In course of time the priesthood of On became very wealthy, rivaling the priesthood of Memphis in this respect, and being surpassed only by the priesthood of Thebes biblical No Amen. Connected with its temple to the sun, a school was operated for training priests and for the teaching of medicine. Greek philosophers and scholars were drawn there to learn the priestly theology, and On became celebrated as a center of Egyptian wisdom. The prophet Jeremiah was inspired to foretell that King Nebuchadnezzar would overrun Egypt and break to pieces the pillars of Beth Shemesh, which is in the land of Egypt. J 43. 10-13 Beth Shemesh corresponds somewhat to the Greek name Heliopolis and means house of the sun. Hence the reference here is likely to the city of On, and the pillars that were to be broken may well refer to the many obelisks around the temple of the sun. Ezekiel's prophecy contains a similar warning. Es 30. 10-17 Here the Hebrew vowel pointing of the name varies from that of Genesis so that the name literally is Aven-Heb. Awen. Some scholars suggest that it was done as a play on words, since Aven means hurtfulness. Something hurtful, and On was a center of idolatry. This may also be the case at Isaiah 19. 18, where the Masoretic text refers to one of the 5 cities in the land of Egypt speaking the language of Canaan and swearing to Jehovah as the city of tearing down Heb. Ihahirez. The Dead Sea Scroll of Isaiah has Ihah-Cherez, meaning city of the sun, thus pointing to On Heliopolis. Here again there may be an intentional play on words, Herez tearing down being substituted for Cherez, another Hebrew word for sun, less common than Shemesh in view of Jehovah's intention to destroy the idolatrous city of On. The paraphrase of this portion of the verse found in the Aramaic Targums reads, City of the house of the sun, which is to be destroyed. Besides the foretold destruct, and his fellow priests, are under priests, namely those who follow Christ's footsteps and whom God anoints to be members of Christ's body, are also sanctified. 2th 2. 13. Re 1. 6. 5. 10. The process of sanctification. There is a certain process or procedure that the one to be sanctified as a footstep follower of Christ must undergo. Using the word sanctify in the sense of purify or cleanse from sin in God's sight, the Apostle Paul wrote, "For if the blood of goats and of bulls and the ashes of a heifer sprinkled on those who have been defiled sanctifies to the extent of cleanness of the flesh, how much more will the blood of the Christ, who through an everlasting Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, cleanse our consciences from dead works that we may render sacred service to the living God." Job 9. 13, 14. The blood of the Christ signifies the value of his perfect human life. And it is this that washes away the guilt of sin of the person believing in him. Hence it really not just typically compare Job 10. 1-4 sanctifies to the purifying of the believer's flesh, from God's standpoint, so that the believer has a clean conscience. Also, God declares such believer righteous and makes him suitable to be one of the under-priests of Jesus Christ. Row 8. 1, 30 such ones are called Hajj, holy ones, saints KJ, or persons sanctified to God. F2. 19. Col 1. 12. Compare 20. 32, which refers to sanctified ones Twahi . So the procedure for those who are to become joint heirs with Christ is, first, that they are drawn by Jehovah God to Jesus Christ by faith in the truth of God's word. Job 6. 44. 17. 17. 2th. 13 accepted by Jehovah, they are washed clean. Sanctified. Declared righteous in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, and with the Spirit of our God. 1 Cor 6. 11 Christ thus becomes to them a textoi acute miritra longo. Sanctification 858 God's will that they have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all time. Heb 10. 10 They are counseled to pursue the sanctification without which no man will see the Lord. Heb 12. 14. Though they are still in the imperfect flesh, which tends towards sin, the sanctified ones can be successful. In warning of the danger of losing one's sanctification, Paul reminds the sanctified ones that it was the blood of the new covenant by which they were sanctified. Heb 10. 29. Lu 22. 20 as mediator of the new covenant, compare Am 9. 13. On the other hand, God warned, "If you will not listen to me nor do all these commandments, you will simply sow your seed for nothing, as your enemies will certainly eat it up." And he added, "Your earth will not give its yield." La 26. 3-5, 14-16, 20. Compare Hag 1. 6. Later, in the prophet Jeremiah's day, Jehovah's warning proved true. Describing their bad condition, Jehovah then said, "They have sown wheat, but thorns are what they have reaped." Job 12. 13. Israel's law governing sowing. In the law given through Moses, God commanded that the land was to be sown for 6 years, but no sowing or harvesting was to be done during the 7th year Sabbath year, nor on the Jubilee year. Acts 23. 10, 11. La 25. 3, 4, 11 This served to test their faith and it gave them more time for pursuit of spiritual things. It also was good for the soil. Since the land was Jehovah's, it was, in a sense, holy, and his people were holy. Therefore care had to be taken to prevent any kind of defilement. If the dead body of an unclean animal, for example, a rat or a lizard, fell upon seed that was wet, it was unclean for use, whereas if the seed was dry, it was clean. This was no doubt because the wetness would tend to spread the uncleanness throughout the seed. La 11. 31, 37, 38. Also, the mixing of different seeds in sowing was not permitted, though seeds of different kinds could be sown, each kind in separate places in the same field. La 19. 19. Isla 28. 25 This may have been to keep the Israelites mindful of their separateness and distinctness as God's people, under his kingship. If an Israelite violated this law, mixing two sorts of seeds, the entire produce of his field or vineyard became as something devoted. It was therefore forfeited to the sanctuary. De 22. 9. Compare La 27. 28. New 18. 14. Illustrative use. Illustrating Jehovah's care for and blessing on the remnant that returned from Babylon, the psalmist wrote, "Those sowing seed with tears will reap even with a joyful cry. The one that without fail goes forth, even weeping, carrying along a bag full of seed, will without fail come in with a joyful cry, carrying along his sheaves." PS 126. 1, 5, 6 Those returning from Babylon were very happy at their release, but they may have text to acute miritra longo. Sowing 1014 God who does all things and man does not understand all of God's ways of working. Accordingly, he advises. In the morning 7. Jos 21. 41 Levi accompanied Jacob into Egypt and died there at 137 years of age. X1. 1, 2. 6. 16. Levites. 2. An ancestor of Jesus Christ, who is referred to as the son of Simeon in the genealogy of Jesus recorded by Luke. He is listed in the line between David and Zerubbabel. Luke 3. 27-31. 3. The son of Melchi, who is the second person preceding Holy Mary's father in Luke's genealogy of Jesus. Luke 3. 23, 24. 4. A tax collector Mr. 2. 14. Luke 5. 27, 29 Who became an apostle of Jesus Christ and was otherwise known as Matthew. Mount 9. 9. 10. 2-4. See Matthew. Leviathan Heb. Lu _ya_ban. This Hebrew word occurs 6 times in the Bible. It is believed to come from a root word meaning wreath. Hence the name indicates something that is wreathed, or gathered into folds. The word is transliterated in most Bible translations. Since, with the exception of Job 3. 8, that references mention water in connection with it, Leviathan appears to signify some form of aquatic creature of great proportions and strength, although not necessarily of one specific kind. Psalm 104. 25, 26 describes it as cavorting in the sea where ships travel, and for this reason many suggest that the term here applies to some type of whale. Though whales are rare in the Mediterranean, they are not unknown there, and parts of 2 whale skeletons can be found in a museum at Beirut in Lebanon. An American translation here says crocodile instead of text to acute miritra longo. Levites 241 The Nile canals. Also as 32. 2. Isaiah 27. 1 apparently employs Leviathan LXX, the dragon, as a symbol of an empire, an organization that is international in scope and that is dominated by one who himself is referred to as serpent and dragon. Re 12. 9 The prophecy is one of restoration for Israel, and therefore Jehovah's turning attention to Leviathan must include Babylon. However, verses 12 and 13 consider Assyria and Egypt as well. So, Leviathan here evidently refers to an international organization or empire that is in opposition to Jehovah and his worshippers. Levirate marriage. See brother-in-law marriage. Levite cities. The Levites were given no territorial allotment, Jehovah being their inheritance. New 18. 20. De 18. 1, 2 But God directed that the other tribes of Israel give them a total of 48 cities and surrounding pasture grass shall function of the cover in the propitiation of sins. Accordingly, the expression is rendered the house of the atonement, the house of propitiation at, the house of the propitiatory cover NW. Symbolic. At Hebrews 9. 5 The Greek word hi::st propitiatory, is used for the cover of the ark. In the type, or pattern, God's presence was represented between the 2 cherubs over the propitiatory cover. The 16. 2. X 25. 22 The inspired writer of the book of Hebrews points out that these things were symbolic. As the high priest on the Day of Atonement entered the Most Holy with sacrificial blood, so Christ took the value of his sacrifice, not before a literal propitiatory cover, but before the very presence of Jehovah God in heaven. The 16. 15. Hajj 9. 11-14, 24-28. Proselyte. A convert, that is, one who embraced Judaism, getting circumcised, if a male. Mount 23. 15. FTN. The Greek word pro-sly-os proselyte is used in both the Septuagint and the Christian Greek scriptures. For more than 19 centuries Jehovah dealt with a special, select people, the family of Abraham and his seed, primarily the nation of Israel. Yet it was possible for a non-Hebrew or a non-Israelite who desired to serve Jehovah according to the requirements of true worship to do so. However, he would have to convert to true religion, that is, become a proselyte. The Mosaic law made specific provisions for a person of non-Israelite origin dwelling in Israel. Such an alien resident could become a full worshipper of Jehovah, being circumcised, if a male, in acknowledgement of his acceptance of true worship. Acts 12. 48, 49. A proselyte was responsible to obey all of the law, and he was to be treated by natural Jews as a brother. The 19. 33, 34. 24. 22. 5. 3. See alien resident. The Hebrew word jah, rendered alien resident stranger, kj, does not always signify such a religious convert. Ge 15. 13. X 2. 22. Jah 14. 8. But in more than 70 instances, where the translators of the Septuagint possibly believed that it did, they rendered it by the Greek pro-sly-os. Throughout Israelite history non-Jews became proselytes, in effect saying about the Jews what Moabitess Ruth said to Naomi. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Ru 1. 16. Jos 6. 25. Mount 1. 5. Solomon's prayer at the inauguration of the temple reflected God's open and generous spirit toward those of many nations who might want to serve him as proselytes. 1 Chi 8. 15. Well, seems to denote the grave. It is used metaphorically to refer to a wife or a beloved woman. PR 5. 15. K 4. 15. In Proverbs 23. 27, where the foreign woman is likened to a narrow well, may allude to the fact that obtaining water from such a well often involves difficulties, as earthenware jars break readily on its sides. Sea fountain, spring. In lands having a long dry season, particularly wilderness regions, from earliest times wells have dry measures modern equivalent 1 cab 4 logs 1.22 L 2.2 dry pint 1 omer 14 fifths cabs 2.2 L 2 dry quart 1 seer 31 thirds omers 7.33 L 6.66 dry quart 1 FR 3 seers 22 L 20 dry quart 1 homer 10 FRs 220 L 200 dry quart liquid measures modern equivalent 1 log 1 4th cab 0.31 L 0.66 pint 1 cab 4 logs 1.22 L 2.58 pint 1 hin 3 cabs 3.67 L 7.75 pint 1 bath 6 hins 22 L 5.81 gallons 1 quart 10 baths 220 L 58. 1 gallon weights modern equivalent 1 gyro 1/20th shekel 0.57 grams 0.01835 Oz T 1 becker half shekel 10 jars 5.7 grams 0.1835 Oz T 1 shekel 2 beckers 11.4 grams 0.367 Oz T 1 minimana 50 shekels 570 grams 18.35 Oz T 1 talent 60 minas 34.2 kilograms 75.5 pounds AVP 91.75 pounds T 1101 Oz T, wheat 1179 been of great importance. Anciently, the unauthorized use of wells appears to have been viewed as invasion of property rights. New 20. 17, 19. 21. 22. The scarcity of water and the labor entailed in digging wells made them valuable property. Not infrequently did the possession of wells give rise to violent disputes and strife. For this reason the patriarch Abraham, on one occasion, formally established his ownership of a well at Beersheba. GE 21. 25-31. 26. 20, 21. After his death, however, the Philistines disregarded the rights of his son and heir Isaac and stopped up the very wells that Abraham's servants had dug. GE 26. 15, 18. Wells were frequently surrounded by low walls and were kept covered with a large stone, doubtless to keep out dirt and to prevent animals and persons from falling into them. GE 29. 2, 3. X2. 15, 16. Near some wells, there were drinking troughs or gutters for watering domestic animals. GE 24. 20. X2. 16-19. Throughout the hills of P, or were parchment scrolls La. KX cannot be ascertained. Vellum. Parchments were normally made from sheep, goat, or calf skin. In the 3rd and 4th centuries CE there arose a distinction between the coarser and the finer grades of the material, the coarser continuing to be called parchment, but the finer, vellum. The vellum was made from delicate skins of calf, veal or kid, or of stillborn calves or lambs. It was prepared by scraping the hair from the washed skins, stretching them on a frame, washing and scraping again to remove inequalities, dusting with chalk, and rubbing with pumice. This produced a thin, smooth, almost white writing material that came to be widely used for important books until the invention of printing, for which paper was better and cheaper. Important Bible manuscripts such as the 4th century Sinaitic and Vatican No. 1209 as well as the 5th century Alexandrine manuscripts are of vellum. Pardon. The Hebrew word namiddle, sometimes translated pardon, is also used in the scriptures in the sense of race, lift up. GE 45. 19. X6. 8. 2 Chi 2. 16. Take GE 27. 3. Take away New 16. 15. A basic meaning of the word, however, is bear, carry. GE 47. 30. 1 Chi 2. 26. S 44. 12. 13. There is still an allusion to this in instances where namiddle is appropriately translated pardon. The scriptures speak of the goat for Azazel as carrying away sin, and it was foretold that the Messiah would bear the error of the people. The 16. 8, 10, 22. Isra 53. 12. By reason of his carrying, or bearing, the error of others, pardon is made possible for them. See Azazel. Whereas the word namiddle may denote the pardon, or forgiveness, extended by God or by humans. GE 18. 24, 26. 50. 17. Middle. Is used exclusively of God's forgiveness, the act by which the sinner is restored to divine favor in answer to his sincere prayer for forgiveness, or to another's intercessory prayer. New 14. 19, 20. 1 Chi 8. 30. When the Hebrew namiddle has the sense of pardon, or forgiveness, the Greek Septuagint at times uses the word middle. In its basic sense, middle denotes let go of. This term can signify forgive, pardon. At Romans 4. 7, the Apostle Paul quoted from Psalm 32. 1:31. 1, LXX, where the reference is to Jehovah's pardoning revolt, and he used a form of the word middle.me, as does the believers as members of Christ's body. Wrote the Apostle Paul. There is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor uncircumcision, foreigner, Scythian, slave, freeman, but Christ is all things and in all. Col 3. 11. Sea cuttings. Sea. The collective waters of the earth is distinguished from land. Or a large body of salt or fresh water, usually meaning a body smaller than an ocean and partially or wholly enclosed by land. Water covers over 70% of the earth's surface. Jehovah the Creator and Controller. The Bible repeatedly acknowledges Jehovah as the creator of the seas, which were formed as distinct from the dry land on the third creative day. GE 1. 9, 10, 13. NE 9. 6. Ac 4. 24. 14. 15. Re 14. 7. It also comments on his ability to extend his power over the sea and to control it. Job 26. 12. PS 65. 7. 89. 9. J 31. 35 When his son was on earth he was given authority by his father to command the sea, with effectiveness. Mount 8. 23-27